Welcome to the 19th season of the Nitwits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Nittany Lions and the only show of its kind in the state. Our Nitwits panel features Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com. Between them, they've covered Penn State for 70 years. The Nitwits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Alex Colley, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, rent what you need. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to the Nitwits, and for the second time this year, we are on the road here at the Penn State All Sports Museum. The Nitwits, of course, the usual suspects, Altoona Mirror's Neil Riddell, FightOnState.com's Mark Brennan. I'm your host, Alex Colley, and it's tradition now, Penn State's bye week, and that means we have the boss sitting here with us, Penn State Director of Athletics, Barbour. Thank you so much for joining us and all your time today. We know you're very busy.
Glad to be with you.
Yeah, 3 in a row makes a tradition, so thanks for
Absolutely.
Your honorary Nitwit.
Thanks for coming to State College.
Yeah, thanks for coming to State College. I would agree
about that. Well, why don't we start, in the last couple of weeks, there's been some, some news concerning football in terms of your, reaffirmation or, further endorsement of James's work. Can you build on that and elaborate? We're sitting at 4-2 here in the open date. You seem like you're pretty pleased, and everybody has a pretty good feeling about the progress that has been made lately.
Well, it's interesting because everybody wants to call it news,
right.
And it's not news to me, and it's certainly not news to those that have spent any time with me. How I feel about James's leadership of this football program, how I feel about where the football program is going, and yet having said that, it's about progress. I've said that very, very clearly since early in the summer, probably last spring, and it's also about seeing where we are at the end of the season. This is a young team, second youngest squad in FBS football, and we're going to have ups and downs, and we've seen that in these first 6. I'd like to think that the trajectory is straight up with a pretty steep climb, but we know that's not going to be it. We're going to have some ups and downs now in these last 6. So for me, it's where we are at the end and how we assess where we are at the end based on compared to where we were at the beginning.
Sandy, there's a balancing act with people, I think some people kind of forgetting everything that Penn State's gone through, but also the expectations. If you don't have expectations, that's a really bad thing. So when you kind of size things up, how do you balance those two things between knowing you came through a very difficult time and realizing that without these expectations, you're not getting people in the stadium here?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I embrace the expectations. I embrace the frustration, frankly, because you want people to have those expectations. You want them to be demanding about what Penn State football should be. So I'm okay with the chatter, and people do need to understand where we've come from, and it's not just your run-of-the-mill rebuild. The one thing I think we can all point to is that the scholarship limitations from the sanctions are real, and they've put us in this, James talks a lot about the depth situation. The statistic around our youth is real. Now the great part about that statistic is that in a couple of years, that's actually going to flip and become very much an advantage for us. These, I think the number is 77 of our roster, 117 roster, I think it is, are either true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or sophomores. A couple of years, that's going to flip. And our roster is going to be very experienced, very laden with seniors and fifth-year seniors. We just got to get to that day.
Do you look at, it's because I think it's fascinating. You have come in almost at midstream, and when you talked about, the tradition and the lack of patience and the frustration at times, because a lot of people, the fans, had suffered for really going back to November of 11. And then a shorter tenure with Bill O'Brien. So the frustration had kind of been there for a couple years, really, before James even got here.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, we talk about those now 5 seasons that we haven't had a losing season, that we've been bowl eligible. Had it not been for the sanctions, we would have gone to a bowl in each one of these sanction years. But the fact of the matter is, that's not Penn State standards. That's not what we want our fan base to get used to or to settle for. And so again, I'll absolutely embrace some of the discourse while we get ourselves back to what are Penn State standards, competing for a national championship. In this league, if you're competing for a conference championship, particularly in our division, you're competing for a national championship.
One thing you had said, I'm going to paraphrase here. If I get it wrong, I know you'll correct me. But one of the things that I think bothered you a little bit the last couple of years were some of the games that really got away. Some of the games where Penn State wasn't really competitive in the fourth quarter. You've had one of those this year, but moving forward, because some of the talent that's coming up, how important is it to be super competitive in all of these games? Maybe you don't win every game, but to make sure you're there from the first quarter through the fourth quarter.
I think you characterized it very well.
Thank you. For once, I got it right.
Yeah. For once you got it. You got it right.
He knows Ohio State's coming in.
Well, absolutely. And when I said that, I believe it was either late spring or summer, and we talked about that. When Penn State is Penn State, we should be able to go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country. And again, that doesn't mean win on any given Saturday. But we're not there yet. We played a very, very good Michigan football team 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. Every team has injuries. I think ours are a little more dramatic than kind of your every year kind of thing. But let's put that aside. The depth issue, we went up against a very, very experienced team. And although I certainly don't like what happened, I don't think it could be fully unexpected on any given Saturday.
When you're there after each game, one of the things that I've pointed out is a lot of times you'll see an AD, they're celebrating after a win. I thought it was pretty cool to see you there after the Pitt game and after the Michigan game, kind of, patting guys on the back and players. How important is that to you to be there for those players, as an AD, not just after you have an overtime win, but when these kids are obviously hurting, because you could see it, especially after the Pitt game.
Yeah, I actually think it's more important for me to have a presence when we're not as successful as we want to be, because especially for the young men in our program, they're trying their hearts out, and win or lose, they should be thanked and appreciated, and know that we're there for them no matter what.
All right. Well, when the Nitwits returns, big time here in Happy Valley. Hockey's already on the ice, and Penn State basketball has returned to the hardwood. Going to be tipping off next month. We'll have more on them coming up when the Nitwits returns.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, Rent what you need.
Hey, I'm Carl Nassib, former defensive end for Penn State University, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Welcome back. We've already heard about some expectation talk when it came to Penn State football, but yesterday was, or earlier last week was Penn State basketball media day for the men's team, and Coach Chambers talking about expectations. How happy are you to see him talking about expectations? Because as he said, that's not something he's had to talk about a lot in the past.
It's exciting. I mean, Pat gets us all excited no matter what, right? But we have such a great standard, such great excellence across the board in our intercollegiate athletics programs. 31 programs, 800 student athletes. A couple of national championships last year, one the year before that. We could keep going there, and it's this is what Pat's been building towards. This is what Penn State has been building towards, and just watching the Big Ten media day, Pat had the opportunity to talk about how we got here. A lot of talk about this class. This entering class and these freshmen, but he said, it really started with Tim Frazier and DJ Newble and Shep and Josh and this has been building, and now those guys get added to a pretty talent-rich roster, and it's going to be fun to see him play a little bit more up-tempo. It's also going to be fun to see what we can do in a pretty stern non-conference season, and then where can we make noise in the Big Ten? That's the place where I think we're going to see the most progress.
Penn State was very patient with Pat in terms of, 6 years now, hasn't been to the NCAA tournament. But how important was that to you when you came in to get to know him, realize, I think you've said that you think he's the guy that's going to take you to that next level, but to have that patience to actually see it pay off in the recruiting as it did in the last year or so?
I think it's so important, whether you're talking about Pat Chambers or you're talking about James Franklin, you have to assess each situation. I needed to get to know Pat. I needed to get to understand the history of Penn State men's basketball, so that you can assess where are we and where are we differently from when we've been before. I mean, we want to put Penn State men's basketball on the map. We want it to be along with football and wrestling and volleyball and now women's soccer and you name it. So you have to kind of understand where we are in our history and where we are in the competitive marketplace of men's basketball. And again, I feel really, really good about the progress. But if you're not patient, and these things take time, they do not happen overnight, particularly in programs where you haven't had a lot of tradition. And when you think you got the right guy from a values standpoint, I think it pays off to give him some time.
I give you credit there because I don't think basketball has ever been a quick fix here without that history. You have a guy who's aggressive. He's really getting after it in Philly with a good non-conference schedule. So, hey, how about the game at the Palestra? What all went into that?
Well, I think Pat's proven he'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I think it's a really, really smart move. We're going into Philadelphia. We've proven that's where we want to make our living from a recruiting standpoint. We take a really high-quality opponent, and the Palestra sells out, snap your fingers, and it's sold out. I think it's a great event. I think our kids are going to love it. I think our fans are absolutely going to love it. But I think it's a continuation of Pat's philosophy and his demonstration. Where do I need to go to promote my program? Where do I need to go to do what's best for my program? And it's a balance. Obviously, you've got a fan base here in State College. Some of them are coming from Philadelphia for every game. You've got a fan base here that you want to make sure that you keep happy. But I think number one, I give Pat all the credit in the world for being willing to do that. Not a lot of coaches would. And I think it's been one of the keys to really building this program.
I touched on it with him at Hoops Media Day. How do you translate these expectations into getting more fans in the seats? I understand season tickets are up, I think 11%, but not just getting the season tickets, but the students, everybody, into it, because there's definitely a buzz, but how does that translate into actually getting the arena across the street there, more people in it?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. Number one, I give Pat huge credit. I mean, that enthusiasm is contagious. That's going to draw people right there. What we're building on the court, the style of play, that's going to draw people. It's a matter of sampling. You get them in there, feel the environment, have a great fan experience. They're going to come back. So from a marketing standpoint, it's the sampling piece. Pat's done his part. This team is going to do its part in terms of being exciting on the court. And again, I think this is part of the patience. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to build, and we're going to wake up one day, and it's going to be like the BJC is what we envisioned when we set forth to do this.
All right. Well, when the Nitwits returns, we've been talking for the past year and a half now about possible facility renovations. We'll have more on that right after this.
The Nitwits are brought to you by the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults.
We now return to the Nitwits. A roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
And welcome back. The last time Penn State Director of Athletics Sandy Barbour was here, she talked a little about the facility news or updates, and where are we at now as far as plans, renovations, etc.
Well, we are just finishing up the facilities master plan. I know that this time last year I said we were well into it and that we would announce it sometime late spring or summer. Well, as we head into fall, we haven't quite announced it yet. But this is, let's not forget, this is a 20-year master plan, and we made a very conscious decision that it was better to get it right than get it fast. But I think we're looking at the end of October, beginning of November, and it'll be an executive summary that'll describe kind of this 20-year vision for facilities, and we'll also lay out what we believe are the next 5-year, the priorities for the next five years. I've also talked about it was very clear relatively early on, and now close to a year-and-a-half process, that question I posed very publicly, renovate or build a new stadium somewhere, that the answer was renovation. So there will be no surprises in the executive summary of the master plan. It will present a renovation of
You
Beaver
broke that
Stadium.
story on our show last year about renovate versus...
I believe I did.
Thank
I believe
you.
I did, yeah.
A lot of people are expecting maybe a smaller stadium capacity. Could you address that?
Sure, absolutely. I think there will be some reduction in capacity. I don't think anything monumental. As we look at our fans and what our fan needs are, and that's essentially what Beaver Stadium is about. Now, LASH and the day-to-day conditions for our student athletes, LASH is more about that. Our football student athletes have a great turf to compete on, have a locker room to go to. We've got media facilities, those kinds of things. So Beaver Stadium is really about our fans. And Gene Smith from Ohio State already said it. The capacity race is over. It's now about the fan experience, and especially for us, where our treads right now, I think, are 24 inches, and the standard today is 33. That right there, even if we were to go all bench, which we're not, we're looking at some chair back. Even if we were to go all bench, we're talking about reducing capacity because we'd want to take those treads and risers and make them a little bit more comfortable for our fans.
Sandy, a lot of people, and nobody probably more than me has asked you this, but why is it taking longer than you initially said? And beyond just wanting to get it right, what are the things that you're trying to get right here, if that makes sense?
Well, first of all, you're talking about, I think the number is 22 facilities. Now, not all of those are going to have major renovations. When we unveil it, there will be a couple of new buildings. But it's, I mean, this is a massive undertaking. No one has ever done a facilities master plan of this depth, breadth, and scope. It's the largest one ever undertaken. So maybe we originally underestimated the time it would take to do it. But it's also, we want to make sure we communicate it right, and we communicate the right things, because this is important enough. We don't want there to be too much misunderstanding. There will be some that we'll have to then take time to make sure we vet and get the proper communication out there. But you know, we want to get it. We want to get it right. We're already kind of starting on thinking about the fundraising for the projects that we know we're putting in the first 5 years, so it's not slowing that part down. But we want to make sure that that what we put out to the public is understandable and that the right vision is created.
You have the Jordan Center and Rec Hall where teams play at both places. Do you envision a merger of those two facilities at some point?
Actually, don't.
Okay.
Don't envision that merger, but stay tuned
for
what the master plan has for you. You know, Penn State has such great tradition, whether it be Beaver, which is, that analysis was really about cost, but obviously the inclination was to want to stay in Beaver. Same thing with Rec Hall. I mean, what a great venue for our volleyball teams and our wrestling team and gymnastics. And so I certainly don't see us from a competition standpoint leaving Rec Hall.
All right, well, we started with college football, and we will end with it. When we return, we're going to be making our predictions for when the Ohio State Buckeyes come to town on Saturday. The Nitwits will be right back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Second-ranked Buckeyes are coming to town for the whiteout game on Saturday, so it is prediction time, gentlemen. How do we think this one
you're
fares?
first. You're the Nitwit.
Yeah,
of the
you
week.
What are you looking at us for?
We're so used to it by now, Neil. We're going to go with whiteout, so obviously those games are usually close. I'm thinking Ohio State, though I'd love to see what they do against Wisconsin, but I'm thinking Ohio State 36, Penn State 24, closer than the score says.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping Ohio State at least wins this week and comes in here. 2 night games in a row for them, but there's 3 coaches on that staff that I think wanted this Penn State job at one point or another. So they're going to be motivated, including the head coach. I'm going to say Ohio State 40, Penn State 23.
I'll go 37-24 Ohio State. Ohio State coming off of a tough game at Wisconsin, as you would imagine. That Wisconsin's always physical. I don't think Penn State's there yet. I think next year's the year we see Penn State start to make some headway. Sandy, I'm guessing you're going to predict a whiteout, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
We gave Sandy and the chair a reprieve.
And just so everybody knows, we were making these picks before. I mean, out of fairness, we're making these picks before the Ohio State-Wisconsin game.
All right. Well,
thank you,
to
Sandy.
Thanks,
thank
Sandy.
you, Sandy.
My
and
pleasure.
Thanks to the Penn State All Sports Museum, and thank you for watching. We'll see you back here on Sunday.
The Nitwits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, rent what you need. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Selaney Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Selaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.